What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, today's video we're going to be talking about X-Men number 10 by Jerry Duggan and Javier Pina, and in this video we're going to talk about why X23 just got an accidental adamantium upgrade. Speaking of adamantium, we're also going to talk about why the X-Men have found a life sign on Orcus's Phobos base bearing Wolverine's trademark adamantium, and last but most certainly not least, why Moira McTaggart has already contacted Orcus about an alliance. We're going to talk about all this and more right now, but first, if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, hit that subscribe button. I post multiple videos throughout the week, plus live stream the Blerd Cave every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. So hit that bell button, that way you don't miss anything. With that out of the way, let's talk about X-Men number 10.
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
Okay, so first things first, let's go ahead and get the easy one out of the way. This was kind of a softball. It would be easy for a lot of people to assume that Laura Kinney, aka X23, aka Wolverine, aka the best there is at what she does, and what she does ain't nice, just like her daddy. Laura Kinney, unlike Wolverine, does not have adamantium-laced bones, at least not entirely. This comic kind of just casually gives Laura Kinney an upgrade that I think is probably long overdue. Where Logan has his entire skeleton laced in adamantium, Laura only typically has her claws laced in adamantium. So even though she has the exact same powers as Wolverine, there are certain things that Wolverine could get away with that Laura just simply wouldn't be able to. Like, for instance, punching someone so hard that it literally shatters her hand or her wrist bones. That is something that's actually a reality for Laura Kinney. Though she has a regenerative healing factor, she would easily recover for something like this. However, it would still be a minor inconvenience, and why have minor inconveniences when you don't have to? Now, why is this happening? Well, there's a little joke that's thrown out by the character Egg, who, you know, the mutant formerly known as Gold Balls, and he just says, remember, it's just her claws. And Proteus just kind of says like, oh, whoa, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Wait, what's happening here? And of course he later says, whoops, I thought all Wolverines had metal bones, which makes me wonder if Daken recently has been resurrected. I'm gonna have to go back and look at the recent Marauders issue and see if maybe he might have accidentally given Daken adamantium as well. Huh. Proteus kind of casually throws out, oh, wait a minute, can we count this one as a mulligan? But they end up not doing it. They just go ahead and push through with the resurrection. So yeah, this is a huge upgrade for Laura Kinney that's long overdue if she's going to take on the Wolverine mantle. She is Wolverine for all intents and purposes, regardless of how mad that makes fanboys of, you know, Logan. It doesn't matter, she's Wolverine. And it's funny to me because yeah, this is something that probably should have happened a long time ago. Now, speaking of things that happened a long time ago and adamantium in the same breath, we do learn that the X-Men have caught wind of a life sign on Phobos. Now, in one of the previous issues of X-Men, we talked about how the new X-Men villain, Fei Long, who works for Orcus, he had created a moon base on Phobos, just kind of overlooking Mars, now planet Araco. And one of the fixtures that he had in his new base was the body of Nightcrawler from when Nightcrawler sacrificed himself during Cy Spurrier's Way of X to save Araco from a plummeting Phobos. Fei Long has kept this body and has pretty much made it a fixture of Phobos base. Not only that, but he's also apparently taken all of the different adamantium skeletons that Wolverine has left behind and decorated the base with those as well, keeping all of these things as trophies and as a sign of human dominance over mutants. All of that aside, there is still a life sign on Orcus base that has just enough adamantium to not be another Wolverine, at least not in terms of being Logan. This is in fact either a woman or a child, and you know, Laura Kinney, being who she is, being someone who is literally a clone derived from Wolverine's DNA, she is also a person who knows what it's like to be tampered with, having been derived from the Weapon X program. And if there are going to be any other people that are trapped within Orcus's clutches, Phobos base or otherwise, she's not going to allow that to happen on her watch. She is going to go in and she's going to try and take care of this. Whoever it is that life sign is coming from, it's someone who is trapped and it's someone who needs our help. However, when she sneaks into Phobos base, it's not who she thinks it is. She's worried that this might be either another clone like herself or maybe a clone like Gabby. Neither is true. It's actually someone very familiar to both Lara and Logan, and that is the character of Lady Deathstrike. Yuriko Oyama is a character who has deep ties to Logan, as some may remember. Her father, Lord Darkwind, once a huge thorn in the side of Wolverine, and a character who's recently come up when we talked about 10 lives and 10 deaths of Wolverine, and it all just kind of makes sense that Deathstrike's just kind of showing up again, getting thrown into the mix of all this. But the reason why she is on Orcus base trapped inside of some kind of containment unit by Fei Long is actually because of Dr. Stasis. Dr. Stasis captured Deathstrike because when they originally interacted with one another, Dr. Stasis said that he could help her with her adamantium poisoning. Adamantium poisoning is something that's very common. We've actually talked about carbonadium poisoning a lot recently when we've discussed Omega Red within the pages of X-Force and 10 Lives and 10 Deaths of Wolverine. Having these metals in your body is poisonous. It would be poisonous to anyone to have that much metal in their body, and having a regenerative healing factor is really the only way to stave that off. It's the reason why Wolverine doesn't die from having his entire skeleton laced with the stuff. But as is wont to do for anyone with a healing factor, sometimes healing factors fail, and that's what's happening with Yuriko Oyama. Now, this is more of a cybernetic healing factor, not so much a healing factor in the way the Wolverine has, but it works just the same. But right now, it's not doing her any favors, and the adamantium in her body is starting to kill her. Now, Dr. Stasis offered to help her with this. However, she reveals that Dr. Stasis felt that she was more machine than human and basically decided to not have anything to do with her. This kind of makes me wonder, because Orcus has this whole deal with, human supremacy and post-humans and using cybernetics and genetic tampering to make humans even more powerful than mutants, or just as powerful as mutants, however you want to look at it. But it's interesting to me that he decided that she was too much of a machine. Now, I want to touch more on this here in just a second, because there are some contradictions that are potentially going to come into play here, and I promise you we'll talk about here in just a second. But what I want to finish here in regards to Lady Deathstrike is that while Deathstrike and Lara have been enemies in the past, there's even a reference to one of the last times they did battle with one another, with Lara ended up being the winner of said battle, which actually goes all the way back to New X-Men number 45 back in 2008, and it was in this issue during the Messiah Complex story arc where Lara had killed, or seemingly killed, Lady Deathstrike. But we all know how well death sticks in comic books, so of course, obviously, Deathstrike is here today. Clearly, she didn't do as good a job as she thought. Getting back to what's going on with Deathstrike is that they are able to save Deathstrike in an instance where it does seem kind of odd to do so. Deathstrike has typically been an enemy of the X-Men, more specifically Wolverine, but she has crossed blades, or rather bladed fingers, with the X-Men on more than a few occasions, more than a dozen, maybe 100 dozen occasions, who knows. But I did find it interesting they were just so readily willing to help her, and I guess maybe it's because she is technically a victim in all of this. And while Lara and Deathstrike have had their enmity in the past, though most of it really having nothing to do with their actual general dislike of each other, just guilt and hate by association, they end up giving her a blood transfusion with Logan's blood, and this apparently does the trick to help keep her alive and keep the adamantium from poisoning her body. I guess having that X gene, that regenerative healing factor being transferred within Logan's blood probably did the trick. Either way, she does just kind of unceremoniously leave, but it leaves the door open for them to actually interact with one another later. Now, I do also want to say, because another video we're going to be doing here, which should be out probably within 24 hours of this video, I find it all interesting because Deathstrike plays a completely opposite role in that book, but it has nothing to do with this. I just found it interesting. But getting back to the whole Dr. Stasis and his whole, you're too machine, it makes me wonder how he would feel about Moira McTaggart. Moira McTaggart, as we learned recently in 10 Deaths of Wolverine, has completely been resurrected and is, for all intents and purposes, a cyborg. Not even just a cyborg, but a cyborg possessed by the Phalanx. I wonder how he feels about working with someone like Mora X. We don't know right away just yet, but we do know that Mora has reached out to Dr. Stasis. And not just Dr. Stasis, also Fei Long as well. She has reached out, and what we know is that based on her previous lives, she knows everything she needs to know about either of these characters. She probably knows more than anyone else, though. She has way more information than anyone in the world would have about either of these two. And she is willing to work with either or both of them, or Orchis as a whole, and she's willing to meet to discuss how they can put their efforts together to thwart mutant kind. Now, of course, Dr. Stasis, not really fully knowing what he needs to know about Mora, he seems to be receptive to the idea of meeting with Mora, even though he does point out that the way that she contacted them is something that could likely lead to reprisal, but I don't think it will. But I do wonder, if he was so quick to turn on Deathstrike because she was too machine, I wonder how he would feel about somebody like Mora, who is pretty much thrown at her whole entire lot with a techno-organic virus. But who knows, maybe he'll look the other way because it'll help him achieve his goals. Either way, that's everything I wanted to talk about, at least, in any grand depth with X-Men number 10. Of course, there was some other stuff. The stuff with Rogue and Destiny is all, pretty cool, but this is story development that's been building up over the past couple of issues. The whole deal with Irene not wanting to help Rogue, or, Rogue calling out Irene because, she has all this power. She can see all these different possibilities, but refuses to tell anybody anything, and she does actually give them a little tidbit to help them out in the whole game world situation. But yeah, that's really everything for me, for my money, that I really wanted to talk about with this, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought about X-Men number 10. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.